What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Lumix Live. Really exciting stream today. Wow, okay, great. That's an awesome way to start these streams. Again, let me start that over again. Welcome to this week's Lumix Live. We have a really exciting stream for everybody today, especially for anyone who's been looking at wanting to increase their audio processing and kind of get some maybe insight in how some other professional workers in the photo video side of the industry handle their audio situations. Slight little change in the general scheduling though. Since both Joseph and Todd are working professionals, the opportunities came up for them with some paid gigs, so they were gracious enough to record their sessions and what they were going to be talking about. So unfortunately, we don't have them here live this week. This was a last-minute kind of change, but we do have some messaging that they recorded and what basically we were going to talk about on the stream. So we will be playing some of those. What that means for live questions for both Joseph and Todd to answer. Still drop your questions in the chat. You can either email them to us or you can drop them in the comments if you're watching this after the stream. But those questions, we'll get to them, and we will have both of them back in a future stream, hopefully not too long from now, where we can actually have more of a true one-on-one, real life conversation with them. So I do apologize for a little bit of that, kind of change in schedule. It's not, it's always hard getting working professionals with their scheduling, to be able to come in and do streams and broadcasts to devote an hour of their daily time. So I'm incredibly thankful to both of them for getting us these pieces for us to play. So hopefully everyone gets something out of it. And what's cool is we've got two pretty different approaches for the way audio is handled here. We're going to be talking, Joseph's going to be covering with Davinci Resolve and primarily working on Apple MacBooks, where, oh, hey, Joseph is here. He just can't live demo. So, hey, hi, Joseph. How are you? Joseph is here to actually answer questions at least during the stream, but we've got the pre-recorded demonstration live. But yeah, there's going to be a cool mix for both if you're a Windows and Premiere user, or if you are a Resolve and an Apple user, or even if you're a Windows Resolve user, you're going to get a lot of information out of these. So this is going to be a really fun stream. Before we go into that, I want to remind everybody about Lumix Pro Services here in the United States. We have 2 tiers available for different levels of creators and different levels of comfort that you want for your equipment. Pretty much any Lumix camera that is purchased in the United States is eligible for the Red membership for free. This is a free program that's available to, as we said, here in the United States. This is going to get you your 3-year extended warranty that comes with the purchase of a Lumix camera. You're going to get a platform where if you happen to have any kind of challenges or issues with the camera, you're able to get it sent over and have an online workspace for tracking repairs, services, things like that. And like I said, this is free. This comes with the purchase of a Lumix camera. All you need to do is follow the link either on the QR code or down in the description, and you can get yourself registered. Just plug in your camera. But for those of you that want a higher level of protection for the potential of incidental damage that happens out in the field, we have the Platinum Series. The Platinum Series is a paid tier service. This gets you also that 3-year extended warranty, so you're going to get that regardless of whether or not you go into the Pro or into the Platinum Series. But in the Platinum Series, you're going to get 2-day repairs with next-day shipping both ways, 20% off out of warranty repairs. So those are those situations where maybe you drop a lens or something happens in the field and you got to get the camera or lens repaired. You're going to get a discount on the repairs there. You get annual sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, firmware updates, all that stuff that can be handled by our service techs. And probably most important for a lot of people is that you're also going to be able to get access to a member hotline where if you have an issue within business hours, you're able to give us a call and actually troubleshoot some things over the phone by being part of that service. So this becomes really useful in a much more kind of time-sensitive environment where maybe you can't necessarily wait for an email to come back. So yeah, lots of cool stuff with Lumix Pro Services. Make sure to check it out. In the United States, it's lumix-pro.us. We've got the link in the description. I'm also dropping the link in the chat right here. But if you're not here in the United States, we do also offer Lumix Pro Services in a number of other countries as well. So you can take a look at that second link, which will bring you to kind of like the global portal where you can pick your country and then check out what's available in those regions for Lumix Pro. There are different tiers, different promotions running, so be sure to take a look at it. And there are always countries being added on and services being updated. So make sure to kind of keep up on that page if it's something that you're looking forward to. So let's see here. Let's see. Let's take a look at some questions really quick before we jump any further. Just as a reminder, if this is the first Lumix Live that you've ever joined, if you tag @Lumix Cameras before your question, we'll be able to address it on the live stream. And they don't have to necessarily be just questions about audio. Since this is a very audio-focused stream, feel free to drop questions about really any topic on there. We always set time aside to make sure that everyone has the ability to get a question answered. That's the whole purpose of these live streams. It's a conversation back and forth between all of you and me. So let's see here. There was a poll that I dropped in the chat at the beginning as to what kind of microphones do you typically prefer. So if you drop an answer in there, it'd be interesting to see. Right now it looks like wireless lav mics are slightly leading out over shotgun or boom mics. That's kind of interesting to me. So let's see here. William Turner says, use the wireless Rode Wireless Go 2s with the Sony lav mics. Provides you TX recording backups in the event of a signal issue. Yeah, which is one of the kind of things to really always think about with audio is, what happens if you have a dropout or an audio issue? And I think Joseph might actually be talking a little bit about that. So Joseph's got some cool tips for you there. Let's see here. Small Brown Fox asks, hello, Sean. I use the TC cable on the S1H, but it often works loose. Can you suggest a better connector than the bundled one? The dial in too small to grip with the camera in a cage. So since that cable, it's a PC sync locking cable. So one of the things that I do with mine, if and when I actually do use any kind of time code with my cameras, I typically don't shoot multicam, so I don't really have to. And when I do, I'm using the box cameras, and I use audio sync for mine. What you can do, and what I have done in the past in the photography times, in the way back, was I actually got a little bit of a Teflon tape, like you use for sealing pipes, and on the end of that kind of screw-in piece for the PC sync port, wrap a little bit on there, tighten it in there, and that will help it keep from backing out. You never want to use things like Loctite or anything like that potentially will damage. Actually, it will damage the connections there. But yeah, something as simple as a little kind of strip of Teflon tape is what I use. Just trim it so you don't have a whole bunch of extra in there. And that just keeps it from backing out. Stuff like that can happen where, if the cable's moving a lot, it slowly starts to work the threads back out. And that's true with any kind of locking port of this style. One of the reasons why when you look at the BGH1 and the BS1H, they have B and C connectors because those are positively locking connectors. But yeah, hopefully that tip helps you there, Small Brown Fox. Let's see here. Klaus says, not a typical here question. If you choose Adobe RGB profiles, does the histogram in the camera account for this? So that you can say histogram is a bit near to where the raw file is. Thanks. So the histogram that you see on the display in the camera is a luminance histogram. It's not giving you color information when you look at it that way. So when you switch between Adobe RGB or sRGB, the histogram, and my understanding is most cameras function like this, save for some oddities where applying a LUT causes a problem with the way the histogram displays, because you never want that. The histogram's only going to be giving you the luminance information, so it's not going to change based on Adobe RGB or sRGB, and the histogram really, on cameras, it's always going to be based on what the JPEG information is instead of the raw data. So regardless of the color profile that you're choosing or the color space that you're choosing for stills, as long as you're keeping it within the far ends of it, you're going to be fine for exposure, especially when it comes to color. The bigger challenge there is just making sure that you're working on a display that actually shows you Adobe RGB, and making sure that the software that you're working with actually shows you and displays Adobe RGB properly. Things like Windows Photo Viewer, if you're looking at something really quick for the JPEGs, you'll notice that that's not optimized for Adobe RGB, so everything will look ultra dark, and the colors will look all weird. So yeah, the histogram's not really going to tell you much. When you do review an image in playback, that's where you do get the breakout of the color channels, and that can help you, but that's going to be in after you've taken the shot. So let's see here. Next question we've got here. A whole bunch of people joining from all over the place. I love seeing it. William Turner, have a Lumix S5, wonderful camera. I tend to agree as well. That you use with an external recorder. Is there an advantage to the mic input on camera over mic input on the external recorder? Yes and no. If you're recording audio into the camera, one, you're using the in-camera preamps. So in general, they're not always going to be the best if high quality, high fidelity is what you're looking for. However, with the Lumix S cameras, save for the S1R, you do have the ability to use the XLR1 audio adapter, which will give you up to 96 kilohertz 24-bit audio, and that will be sent over the HDMI, so you will get really high quality audio that way. The built-in 3.5 millimeter, it is going to be a lower quality audio, and it's using the built-in preamps, so you may have like a slightly higher noise floor. It may not be the greatest audio if that's going to be one of the number one things that you're looking for. But also with that, recording into, using the monitor's preamps as well, you kind of run into similar situations there too. It's what the device is set up to be recording. So truthfully, what I'd recommend, and it is a little bit of work, test both. See which one you tend to like better. If you need something really quick. Just like in the poll that I put up before, asking about, internal, lav mics, shotgun, external recorders, there are so many ways that you could be capturing audio for your video production that you really have solidly inexpensive ways to do it across the board. One thing I will tell you is most of the time that I record, pretty much any of the training videos that I create, I primarily will use one of two solutions. I will either use my XLR1 with a Sennheiser AVX mic, which gets me the wireless lavalier. It's XLR. I have the audio controls on this particular device, so I get better control over my audio at the time of recording. Or more recently, and thank you, Todd, for these, is I'll end up using the Sarmonic dual channel wireless lavs. If I'm doing something where I may have two people, I'll use one of these because it's one receiver and two transmitters. And this one just plugs into the 3.5, and for the stuff that I record, I don't really ever notice too much of a difference between the two. The XLR, the Sennheiser AVX system, to me, has a little bit more of a full sound to it. But I'm also not an audio engineer, so I'm going by what sounds good and what I can edit with properly in Premiere, since that's my editing software. So, back to the point with William, you may not notice a huge difference between them unless you're really looking at things like noise floor, ambient sound, any kind of additional preamp noise that gets added to it. So yeah. Let's see here. A couple more questions that came in here. William Turner, is there an expected delay to register for Lumix Pro Red? Site says serial number submitted for registration for a month. There shouldn't be that big of a delay. Obviously, with the state of, at least here in the United States, with the state of employees having to work from home in a lot of cases, with the varying levels of COVID, some things do slow down that require manual entering in a process, because a lot of that stuff, especially when you're dealing with customer information, is very heavily protected. So certain things like that, I will send a note over to my LPS team to just kind of double check and make sure that there isn't kind of anything majorly holding up. But yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And yeah, we'll follow up. But let's see here. A couple other comments, some back and forth questions. Thank you, Joseph, for taking some answers there. Alan says, does Panasonic test the EIN self-noise of the camera preamps? Does anyone know what the EIN of the XLR1 adapter might be? It's a bit above my head. I'd have to actually check with one of our engineers for something like that. But know that we are a very large electronics manufacturer that has a lot involved in audio. For those that don't know, Techniques is it's a brand under the Panasonic umbrella, and they make some awesome headphones and audio devices, things like that. I love using my headphones from Techniques, so I'm sure that there's quality testing when it comes to audio, the same levels that we do with the actual cameras themselves, to make sure that what you're getting, and when we say, a spec is delivered out there, that's what you're getting. So, all right. Let's see here. It looks like we got some good questions answered there. Looks like Todd's jumped in, or not Todd, Joseph has jumped in and is answering some questions, so thank you, Joseph. And with that, let's actually take a look at what Joseph had recorded for us. So, hey, Joseph, you're going to have to watch yourself and listen to yourself for a little bit. So here we go.
Hey, Sean. Hey, everybody. I'm PhotoJoseph. I'm a Lumix ambassador, and Sean asked me to come onto the show today to talk a little bit about my audio workflow. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I've recorded this video for you guys to see. Now, I'm going to show you some of how I do audio for my YouTube videos. And what's a bit interesting here is that I used to use Final Cut. I mean, I've been using Final Cut for ever, and just quite recently I started using Resolve. I really like it. Now, there are things about Final Cut that I still think are better, but for a lot of what I'm doing, Resolve turns out to be the better tool. And when it comes to audio files, there's some really neat things in Resolve that I can do that I couldn't do in Final Cut that really make it a better tool for what I'm doing. Specifically when I'm shooting my YouTube videos, I always shoot multiple tracks of audio. I have my main microphone, which is a lavalier mic, and that's what I use for the vast majority of my audio. But I'm also recording a shotgun mic. That shotgun is pointed at me, but also kind of at the table so that I can pick up the sound of stuff that I might be working with on the table if I want to fill in any audio from there. But the real truth is the main reason it's there is backup. In case I bump my lavalier mic, or maybe there's just a weird audio dropout because it's a wireless mic. For any reason that I might need to have a backup, having that boom mic is awesome to have. So I'm going to show you how I handle the dual track audio files, and then I'll show you a little bit of how a final mix might happen on one of my finished projects. So let's get into Resolve. All right, here's the video clip I'm going to work with. I'll import that into Resolve. And if I open the audio inspector and play this, you'll see that there's actually 4 tracks of audio in here. So 2 of those are the tracks that I want. The ones that I want are the first and the second. So I'm going to go ahead into the metadata view and switch over to the audio tracks view. And here you have a series of track names up through, well, 24 and then a bunch of others. This is not what's on this particular video clip. This is just what's available in Resolve. And I know that on track 1, I have my lav, and on track 2, I have my boom. Track 3 and 4 are just scratch. So I'm just going to put scratch in there so I don't forget what they might be later. And now my audio tracks are labeled. Now if I right click on this file and go to Clip Attribute and then go to the Audio tab, you'll see here that I have all 4 channels of audio for this video clip. And you'll see here that they're named as I just named them. There's my lav mic, and then the boom, and the 2 scratches. I only actually want one of these at any given time. So I'm going to delete all 3 except for the lav. That is my primary mic. But I will be able to cut over to the boom if I need to later. So it's a lav, we set it as a mono track, hit OK. I'm actually going to go ahead and fix the color space on this. Let's set this input color space to Panasonic V-Gamut. And then I'm going to create a new timeline using this clip, and that's all there is to it. Ready to go. I'll open up that timeline, and here we go. Let's go ahead and just mark some quick edits on here. I'll just cut out the beginning and the end of this. And if I'm listening to this here, well, let's just go ahead and listen to what we've got so far. My videos. I have a couple of things that I always do. For example, when it comes to audio, I'm always recording dual audio. I have both a lavalier microphone. Okay, so there's that lavalier mic. You can hear I've clearly tapped on that. You know that that's that mic. And I have a boom mic, which is way up there. I can't actually reach it right now. Okay, so as I said, the whole point of me having these is as a backup so that if I bump this mic, I can cut away from it to something else. So I did this on this recording, so let's find that spot. Right about here, I think it is. Yep, there's my hand, so let's have a listen. Bump my mic while I'm recording. Now that's an easy one because I'm not actually talking, but later on over here, I do it while I'm talking. Even if I do it while I'm talking, chances are there we go. So there I've got something that I need to fix. So let's go in nice and tight on this. And first thing I'll do is slice the audio around the mistake. So I'll just bring up the blade tool and slice that there and slice it about there. Now, if I don't have the blades in the exact right spot, that's okay. This is easy to fix later. This whole thing right now is using the lav mic. I'm gonna go ahead and select this, right click on it, go into clip attributes. This is the part that has the problem, and switch that to boom. Now, as I do this, while I'm talking, and the bump is gone. Now, it's not gonna sound exactly like the other audio while I'm talking. So with that in mind, what I'll usually do is refine this to the point where I can cut out as little as possible and switch over as little as possible, maybe add a crossfade between the two if necessary. And also I might end up having to adjust levels or even EQing this clip separately. But as this stands, do it while I'm talking, that's a pretty good demo of that. So there's how I use multiple tracks of audio. Simply slice out a mistake and switch over to another channel. And I have to do this more often than I care to admit, but that's the way it is. Now let's talk about the next level of audio work, and that would be working with the EQ, noise reduction, anything else that I might do. Instead of demoing this on this project, which obviously doesn't have a whole lot going on, let me jump over to another project that I did recently. Here's a video that I did for the Mevo cameras. And I'll switch over to the Fairlight room, and then from here we can see all the different audio that's going on. So this is my studio boom and the studio lav. I actually had a problem here where my mic was gone for a whole section of it, so I kind of had to mix things up a little bit, but we're not going to talk about that. But let's talk about the fixes that I did. So if I look at this track in here, I have a lot of different clips. In fact, 74 clips that need adjusting. Now what I don't want to do is have to go into every single clip and adjust them. So when I have something that's global for a whole bunch of clips, I'll make sure that those clips are all on a single track, and then I'll make track level adjustments. So this track is selected here. Over here on the right, under the mixer, we'll see the bus for this, and you can see all the things that have been done to it. So this, for example, has an RX8 voice denoiser applied to it. So usually the boom mic needs a little bit of denoising applied, so that's on there. There is a de-esser on here as well. Apparently I was hitting the S's hard that day, so we pulled those out of there. And it looks like there's a little bit of EQ work going on. Oh, this is a little bit of compressor happening in there. And then also here's the equalizer, a little bit of EQ work. So this is more work than I would normally have to do, but I show this one to you on purpose because this was a mistake. Like I said, it all should have been on the lav, but I had to incorporate a lot of the boom that day. And so I did a lot of work on that track to make it match as closely as possible to the boom. Now I'll show you a little secret here, and if you have seen this video but you hadn't noticed this, now that I'm showing this to you, you might want to go back and look at it. But see how there's two different sections here that is all studio boom, and then over here, all studio lav. And then here's this field lav. Well, this is a scene that I shot outdoors. I didn't actually do this whole section wrong. It was just a piece or maybe two pieces of it. I don't remember exactly. But if I was cutting back and forth between the boom and the lav for big chunks of audio, that was noticeable. But what I did instead was I used the studio boom for all of this, and I did as much as I could to make that sound good. Then I cut over to this field scene, and then when I came back, I went ahead and cut back to the studio lav. Because there's a big gap between the all boom and all lav, you don't really notice. Now that I've told you, if you go back and listen to it, you probably will tell the difference. But because I would rather work with the lav for most of the audio, and I just couldn't for the first part of it, that's how I broke it up. So just a little audio hackery technique in there. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show you guys today. I hope you enjoyed that. Take care of yourselves. And Sean, again, thanks for having me on. Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
So yeah, that was the beloved PhotoJoseph, who is in chat. You know, tons of information there. So, you know, with how much stuff that you've got at your disposal with software now, you've got so many possibilities for correcting audio. And I think one of the cool things with, you know, what Joseph showed, and we're going to talk about this with Todd's video as well, you know, there's always the situation where something in audio gets screwed up. I know I've had it before, especially working with wireless lavaliers. A couple training video sessions ago that I was creating for some, internal staff and stuff like that, I had run into a problem where, because I only recorded with one microphone, I had no backup audio. There was interference with the radio transmitter I was using for my wireless mic, and that whole shot was basically burned because I ended up having weird cutouts because of the interference in the area. Being able to record, especially if you're in a studio, being able to record multiple different tracks of audio so that you've got your backup really can save your butt down the line. It was one of the times where I wasn't using my XLR1, which I could very easily just have one mic plugged in here and one mic plugged into channel 2 and then recorded a backup series of it. This way, if something went wrong on the one channel, I could just cut over like Joseph did. But yeah, hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it? So let's see here. Some questions that came in while Joseph's video was playing. It's here. So this was a question, actually. It's not necessarily for the audio conversation, but Alfredo is Tick, I think, if I'm not pronouncing that right for your handle. Sorry. I know some people will hate this question, but I want to make high-quality vertical videos like YouTube Shorts, but I haven't found a professional camera apart from phones that record vertically 4K. And this is one of those things where, while yes, I think a lot of people may be a little triggered by the vertical video format, this is becoming such a big part of, advertising and in general deliveries that some companies are going to start asking more and more for, because these platforms are incredibly valuable. The more and more that content is consumed on a mobile device, the more and more the average user is going to be watching it vertically. So if you're trying to maximize the amount of resolution that you're working with and the framing, being able to record vertical is actually a very useful tool for those times. It means that if you normally don't ever do this, it means that you can have the camera set up this way and have the tools available so you don't have to pass that job up or spend all the extra time in post to rotate and manage and then work out all the export resolutions. But basically, Lumix cameras, since the G100 was announced a year and a half ago at this point, have the ability to do vertical video tagging. All this means is that when you hold the camera in a vertical position, it's going to tag that video as vertical. So when you throw it into something like Premiere, Resolve, Final Cut, that footage is going to be vertical. You're not going to have to worry about, rotating, making sure your canvas is right, all that kind of stuff. It is vertical already. And a lot of the programs now have export presets that are vertical. I know Final Cut does and has for some time now. So the G100 was the first that did it. The GH5 Mark II supports this. The S series all supports this. So it is becoming something that's more and more commonly found, at least in the Lumix brand of cameras, because truthfully, let's look at it this way. If it's available and it doesn't impact anything, why not? So yeah, vertical video is something that is here to stay, and it's going to be the bane of some people's existence, but truthfully, like everything, why pass up the job if you can do it? And if there's a tool available in a camera that makes it easier for you, I'm always one of those people that just says go for it. So let's see here. Let's see some of the comments that have been coming through. Glenn, I've been using the RX Suite a lot more lately to clean up audio. Interesting. All the options in Fairlight. Yep. John B. Audio is tough for me. One-man band, doing weddings and bar mitzvahs. Really hope to get better this year. I think one of the things to take away, too, is that, audio, all of us are so focused on video quality and resolutions and things like that. And while, yes, they are incredibly important, you want to be able to have the file to work with for an output wherever you're planning to send that footage. Audio is something that often, I think a lot of people kind of brush aside. Not necessarily don't take seriously, but audio becomes one of the most important things once you get everything else kind of nailed down. You want people to be able to understand things that are being said in audio. You want to make sure that sound design in general is done in the right way. We've had conversations with filmmakers in the past where, specifically some of the questions come up is sound design. Why choose this audio track? Why choose this sound? How do you mix ambient sounds with your actual vocals? There's just so much involved with it that honestly one stream's never going to be enough to cover this. So hopefully we can do another one of these down the line, and actually go into maybe a little bit more detail on how you mix in different audio plans. So let's see here. Other comments. Thank you, Joseph, for taking up so many of these questions. It's awesome. All right. And if anyone isn't already, go subscribe to PhotoJoseph. He is an insane wealth of knowledge, and he's a really fun guy to learn from. So I know I learn a lot of stuff from him. So, all right, cool. So with that, let's take a look at a different approach here. Let's take a look at our Lumix ambassador, Todd White, and how he handles audio down here working based in Adobe Premiere.
Hey everyone, Todd here, and I am one of the Lumix ambassadors, and today we're talking about how to edit audio in Premiere Pro. Before we dive into Premiere, let's talk about the number one thing, and that is getting it right in camera as much as possible. Now, getting the audio right in camera has a lot of different aspects to it. A lot of it's going to do about where you're recording, what your environment is, what your surroundings are, and so on. But for me, the main thing, just to really start off with, is that I try to keep my audio levels when I'm monitoring in camera. I try to keep them around -9 to -12. Now, audio works off of a negative scale, so if you're at 0, then you're blown out and you've basically lost that audio. It's peaked. And then we work down from -3, -6, -9, and -12. And -9 and -12 is a really good range to stay within. Obviously, the numbers go lower than that. Keep in mind, though, that if you record the audio too low, then when you have to bring that audio up in post-production, you're bringing up everything else with it. So when it comes to recording audio in the field, there's a whole lot of different options of ways that we can record this audio. We all know and agree that the worst audio that we can record is the audio that goes straight into the camera. After that, we can look at a shotgun mic, and you've seen many vloggers use these, the kind of microphones that go on top of the camera. I use them a lot when I'm recording my YouTube videos. And then we can move from there and go into a wireless lav system, and we can get those in 1 and 2 channel systems. And then from there, we can also look at using an XLR microphone, which is a higher quality microphone, usually a little more directional in their focus and how they capture the audio. And a lot of times we'll see those used as boom poles, or they'll be just right out of camera, right at about a 45-degree angle, really close to who you're trying to capture the audio from, just using a little bit of a different way. So lots of different options, but the main thing for me is that I look at the environment, where I'm recording, what kind of environmental noise is happening, and then also keeping that audio volume between -9 and -12. Now that we've covered the basics of capturing audio in the field, and believe me, there's a whole lot of other variables and things that we could talk about, but mainly we want to get into how to edit these files in Premiere. So let's jump right in and take a look at that. Oh, and real quick before we go to Premiere, one more thing about recording audio in the field. When you're recording that audio, be sure to monitor that audio the proper way. Like, get yourself a proper set of headphones, the headphones that go over the ears. This is going to give you a much better way of monitoring the audio, hearing all of the sounds that are going on. The earbuds just don't work. So this is the best way to do that. Anyway, let's go to Premiere. So here we are in Premiere Pro, and as you can see, I've already brought the clips over into the timeline, and I've done the color adjustments using an adjustment layer, but I've not edited the audio yet. So let's go ahead and start off by taking a listen to the clips themselves before any editing and see how we did as far as recording in the field and getting those audio levels correct. And we're going to watch the audio meter over here on the right-hand side of the screen to see where those levels are. Hey everyone, Todd here, and I am one of the Lumix ambassadors, and today we're talking about how to edit audio in Premiere Pro. Before we dive into Premiere, let's talk about the number one thing, and that is getting it right in camera as much as possible. So as you can see, we did really well. I did really well of adjusting that in camera and keeping those levels where we wanted them to be between -6 and -9. Now there were a couple of spots where I did spike and go above that, but I did not go into the red and did not blow anything out, which is good. Now as you listen to that, you'll also hear all the background noise. I was in a park, and so we're going to walk through a couple of ways to edit this and to remove that background noise and also make my voice sound a little bit better as well. There are a couple of different approaches to editing these clips in Premiere Pro. First of all, I could go in and I could edit each one of these clips individually, but we have quite a few clips that are on this sequence, so that would take a while and it would be a little bit tedious. Sure, I could edit one and then I could copy and paste those attributes across multiple clips, but that's more steps than what we need to do. In the scenario that we were in, because it's just my voice and my voice is level throughout the whole entire timeline or sequence of the video, the environment was the same and there wasn't a lot of variables that come into play, then we're going to use the audio track mixer to edit this, which instead of editing each one of these clips individually, it will allow us to edit them by the tracks. So like I'm going to work on track 3 and track 4. Those are going to be the ones that I'm going to focus on, track 3 and track 4. Now there are two ways that I can get to the audio track mixer. Right now I'm in my editing workspace and I can go to Window and I can choose Audio Track Mixer, which will then bring that up here in the top portion of my screen. That's one way. The other option is that I can go over to the Audio workspace and I already have the Audio Track Mixer here by default in the Audio workspace. How you get to the Audio Track Mixer is a personal preference, and I will leave that up to you as far as your workflow. Personally for me, I'm going to come over into the Audio workspace since it's already here, and I'll work on this in this area. So there are two things that I want to accomplish as I'm editing the audio for this video. Number one, I want to remove the background noise, and number two, I'd like to go ahead and level my voice and just add a little more punch to it. So let's go ahead and dive into that. So as I mentioned in the audio track mixer, I'm going to be working on audio track 3 and 4. However, because I'm the only one here and I'm the only person on camera, then I could actually work off of this particular level, which is the mix or the overall mix or the master mix, if you will. And I can make my changes here and that will apply across all of my audio tracks. If there was another person that was on camera that I was interviewing, then I would want to edit the tracks individually because their voice and how they speak and their tone would be different than mine. And at that particular instance, I would edit the tracks individually. But because it's just me, I'm going to work off of the master track. Now, when you first pull up your audio track mixer, there's a whole nother section here that is not being displayed. And it's hard to see, but right over here in the far left-hand side of your audio track mixer is this little arrow right here. I'm going to go ahead and click on that arrow, and that is going to reveal my section up here where I can put in my effects. Because basically when we denoise and when we add in some punch for the voice, we're basically adding effects to the audio tracks. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and do my denoising. So to add the denoise, I would just come up to the very first line up here, the very first slot, if you will, and I'm going to pull down menu, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to choose noise reduction and restoration, and I'm going to choose denoise. So now I have the denoise, it's set and it's applied to that track. I'm going to go ahead and double click where it says denoise, and that brings up my denoise settings. Now by default it's set for 40%, and personally for me less is more, and so I don't want the voice to sound over processed. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring this down by default to be 20%, and let's take a listen and see how that sounds. Hey everyone, Todd here, and I am one of the Lumix ambassadors, and today we're talking about how to edit audio in Premiere Pro. Before we dive into Premiere, So at 20%, that did a really good job of taking away and removing the background noise. Now for me personally, unless it's just super distracting, I don't want to take out all the background noise. I feel like there needs to be some context that I'm in a park. So you would expect there to be some noise that's going to be happening. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave that at 20% right now. And just so you get a feel for how it sounded, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on and turn it off as I'm doing a playback. And that way you'll be able to hear the difference. Getting the audio right in camera has a lot of different aspects to it. A lot of it's going to do about where you're recording, what your environment is, what your surroundings are, and so on. But all right, so there you heard the before and the after of what that sounds like. So basically that's all there is to it as far as denoising my video with the situation that I have right here. So I'm going to go and close that out. And the next thing that I talked about doing was I wanted to go ahead and level off and just add a little bit more punch to my voice. To do that, I'm going to use a tool called the Multiband Compressor. So I'm going to go ahead and once again, go into one of my slots. I'm going to choose the amplitude and compression, and I'm going to drop down and we're going to choose Multiband Compressor. Now, a multiband compressor is useful because it allows you to modify and control different frequencies throughout your audio track. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the multiband compressor so you guys can take a look at that. I'm going to go and double click on multiband compressor, and here it is. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with everything that's in here because quite frankly, I'm not a professional audio editor. And I'm not a sound engineer, but I do know enough to make my videos sound good and to get the best quality that I can from the audio that I have recorded. Where it says presets, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the broadcast preset is where I'm going to work off of. And I'm going to work off the broadcast preset. And this is what it sounds like before we make any changes or adjustments to it. To it. A lot of it's going to do about where you're recording, what your environment is, what your surroundings are, and so on. But for me, the main thing just to really... So as you can see, when I add the broadcast preset, it adds a little bit more punch to my voice, but also it raised the volume of my voice some as well. And we saw that I was starting to hit some of the reds and get into the space that I really don't want to be. Just to show that again. A lot of it's going to do about where you're recording, what your environment is, what your surroundings are, and so on. So I want to go ahead and adjust that and to pull that back a little bit. Now, here in the multiband compressor, we see 4 different areas here. The blue section is going to be our low frequency. The orange section is going to be the low to mid frequencies, which is where the human voice sits. And then we have the green frequencies, which are the upper mids. And then we have the purple, which are going to be your highest levels, which is where you're going to have a lot of those S sounds or those plosive sounds that we want to avoid. For me, there's about 3 things that I'm going to adjust as we look at the multiband compressor. Number 1 is, depending upon how much bass is in my audio, I'm going to go ahead and set this crossover here in the bass area. I'm going to go ahead and bring this down to right about 100. Right here it says 96 as far as the low, but by dragging that, I brought it down. I can also just click here and type in 100 and I'm good to go. The reason why I do that is because when people are listening to this in headphones or if they have a subwoofer in their speaker system, this will help that subwoofer or in the headphones to not get too bassy and to be overwhelming. So I set that limit, the crossover limit, for 100. So the next thing I want to address here in the multiband compressor is going to be the output gain or the levels that my voice is at right now. Because once I applied this, it seemed to have pushed that level just a little bit too much and a little bit too hot than what I'm comfortable with. We looked at that already once, but let's take a look at it again. Where you're recording, what your environment is, what your surroundings are, and so on. But for me, the main thing just... And as you can see in the audio meter there, that I was starting to hit into the -3. It even hit up into the 0 at some points as well. So I want to go and correct that. And basically what I want to do is, obviously I don't need to put a gain on my audio. I don't need to push that up because it's already loud enough. What I want to do is I want to limit this and to keep it from getting into that red area and that red space. So I'm going to go down here in my limiter section, and in the margin, I'm going to go ahead and put in -5. Now that's just my personal preference of what I will set that at as a -5. You could set that for whatever you feel is best for your scenario. What I'm basically doing is, if we look over here on the audio meter, I am telling it not to go beyond the -5. So it's between 3 and 6, obviously. And I'm telling it not to go into the -5. Don't go above that. So I'm setting a hard limit on the audio level. And to make sure that that'll work for you, make sure that you have brick wall limiter turned on. And that's going to basically do that. It's going to set that -5 as the cap. So now if I go back and play the audio, here we go. Aspects to it. A lot of it's going to do about where you're recording, what your environment is, what your surroundings are, and so on. But for me, the main thing, just to really start off with, is that I try to keep my audio levels, and I'm monitoring in camera, I try to keep them around. All right, so as you can see, it definitely is keeping that capped at the -5. So at this point for me, this is what I do as far as editing my audio. I use the denoise and I use the multiband compressor. Now, if you are editing audio of another person and they were doing a 2-person interview, then you may need to put this multiband compressor on each track and then change the gain and other adjustments to accommodate somebody else's voice. All right, so that covers it for basic audio editing in Premiere Pro. Now, obviously, these steps are going to get more complicated and a little more involved when you add additional people or additional audio tracks. But for single person to camera, YouTube style videos, those are the main adjustments that I make. So just a quick recap. Try to get it right in camera, keeping the audio levels between -9 and -12. And then when you're in Premiere Pro, drop on some denoise if necessary, and then use a multiband compressor to sweeten up the audio, sweeten up the voice, and also level the audio off. So those quick tips should get you started and on the way to better audio, especially when you're editing in Premiere Pro. And at this point, I'm heading off to my next gig. So Sean, I'm going to hand things back over to you.
So yeah, very different approaches when it comes to audio and how it's handled between different kind of environments. I think it's kind of one of the cool things looking at how Joseph handles audio, how Todd handles audio, and I mean, even for, some of the questions that we had asked through here, how someone like myself might handle audio who's not necessarily anywhere near the level of what Todd and Joseph do as far as video production. So unfortunately, Todd couldn't be here to answer questions on the stream, but if you have questions about Todd's workflow and what he showed in this video, make sure to drop them in the chat or drop them in the comments after this video, and we'll make sure to get them answered for you. So I wanted to take a minute here and address some of the questions that had come up during the section here. So one of the questions that came in here was from Joe Pro. And the question was, will future cameras support Bluetooth headphones? Could perhaps be an interesting alternative to wired headphones. So there's a number of challenges when it comes to interchangeable lens cameras and video cameras with Bluetooth audio monitoring. The chief among them is latency latency. Bluetooth latency 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 y varies dramatically depending on the hardware that gets used, the chipsets that are being implemented in the cameras, and the technologies that are being licensed for it. When you go to something like mobile devices, you'll see a lot of companies will start advertising things like Qualcomm's aptX, and then there's aptX low latency, and all these different kind of modes. Each of those are typically ways that they're using Bluetooth to reduce latency for things like listening to your Bluetooth headphones instead of wired headphones, especially now that, I mean, pretty much every mainstream device no longer has a 3.5mm headphone jack on them. So how does that relate to cameras? With cameras, your audio monitoring is going to be much more sensitive to any kind of delay or dropout or latency issues. That also means that in order to implement these things, there typically ends up having to be some pretty severe hardware changes in the camera industry to start adopting some of those technologies. And they're still not even perfect. So will cameras get Bluetooth audio in the future? Possibly. The truth is, right now, even the highest end Bluetooth monitoring for real world scenarios, I don't personally believe I'd ever trust it yet for something that could be hypercritical. For phone listening, for connecting to your car or headsets, things like that. Like I use Bluetooth sets on my motorcycle helmet and all that kind of stuff. It's fine. You're not necessarily having to match up, perfect lip sync audio with, or lip sync video with the audio there. When it comes to recording cameras, wired audio is still always going to, truthfully, I think wired audio is still going to be providing you the best for monitoring solutions. But it is a question I can tell you for sure that both Matt Frazer and I have brought up to our engineering teams in Japan about, is this something that could be done in the future? And if so, is it a really big endeavor to go under? When you look at it, there's reasons camera manufacturers don't do this. And there's also kind of the whole other point that most camera manufacturers use bespoke processors instead of, off-the-shelf, Qualcomm chips and things like that for image processing, since those are designed for multimedia and phones and cell connections and all that kind of stuff. Cameras typically end up being very specifically designed to work with image processing and how the camera's operated. So it'd be cool. But right now, it's kind of one of those things that I just don't foresee happening in the near future. So hopefully that answers your question, Joe Pro. The other question that came in here was from Mark. And the question's been removed at this time, but it's about recommendations on microphones. What kinds of audio equipment are people using in the field and what seems to work best? I can tell you from my experience, and if Joseph is here, maybe he can drop in what maybe his preferences are as far as microphones and things like that. As someone who doesn't have any kind of connection to other audio brands or companies, I kind of work with what either I've been lucky enough to get gifted from friends, or just through, picking up something because it's, I personally know the brand and I like the brand. I have two main microphones that I primarily work with if I'm recording into the camera. One is the Sennheiser AVX lavalier system, and basically anything involved with the Sennheiser AVX system. Couple reasons for it. I like the full sound that I get out of it, and more importantly, I like how compact the receiver is for it. With this particular one, I can plug it right into my XLR1. If I can figure out how to fit it in there. There it goes. I can record right into my XLR1 with this. It's compact. It has a removable battery, so I can plug it into, it's a USB micro B connector, so not really anything new. And I can have a couple of these be charged, ready to go. And I use their wireless lav system for this. It's been one of the most reliable wireless lav mics I've used, especially in a more heavily congested environment. And the pairing system on it is super easy, just holding the link button on both devices and then they'll pair up. More recently, I've started working with this Sarmonic Rx9 receiver that Todd had graciously given to me. This microphone has really come in clutch in a lot of scenarios for me because it's a dual receiver. So I can have two wireless lavs set up, one for my microphone, one for someone else, and I'm able to have pretty much everything set up. The only downside I have found compared to my AVX system is it's maybe a little bit more susceptible to interference. So it still has channels that I can go through and I can change and adjust for the environment that I'm in, make sure that my audio is solid with it, and I have two channels there with it, so I can actually have two people there. So those are the two main ones I use when I'm on the go. For Lumix Live, though, and I think this is going to be probably one of the funniest things, because I haven't set this thing up yet. Well, I mean, I haven't improved it since I moved into the recent sets for Lumix Live. I use a cheapo microphone. This is just a cheapo condenser mic that I picked up online. And I use this into my Blackmagic A10 Mini through 3.5 millimeter. It's an XLR mic. And then that feeds into OBS. I manage the levels and stuff right on the device itself. But for things like this, I use the NVIDIA Broadcaster software for noise reduction and stuff like that, because I have two desktop tower PCs right next to me, and they're very close, and they're relatively loud because they're pretty high performance. And that's primarily what I've been using for these streams. I would love to update this microphone to something like a Rode or Sennheiser mic in the future, just to get a better sound out of it that I don't have to run through processing. But yeah, those are kind of the recommendations that I have from my personal experiences. So let's hear. Hopefully that helps, Mark. That's a lot of kind of info there, and I'm sure a lot of other people have a lot of really good recommendations. I will say that there is no one microphone that fits every single need. You're going to end up owning multiple different microphones for different scenarios, especially if you're like a wedding videographer. Shotgun mic can work great in some scenarios. Lav mics will work even better. Internal scratch audio is going to be a nice thing to have as well. So let's see here. What are the questions? We got a couple more minutes before we're going to end up calling this stream for the day. Question here. Will the stream be uploaded on YouTube? Yes, all of the Lumix live broadcasts are always archived on the Lumix Cameras channel. We have an entire playlist devoted to all of the Lumix live streams that we've been doing for the last 2.5 years. So if there's something that you want to take a look at, you can always go up on there and take a look at them. More recently, as I've had time and the bandwidth to be able to actually do it, I am chaptering the videos, so you'll be able to actually just click through, get right to an area that you want to get to, so it's not just 1 hour-long video. But yeah, all of these videos are archived. You're on the channel already, so just go to the playlists and you'll be able to see Lumix Live and the entire back catalog. The only ones that aren't up there are the first 2 or 3 that we did in my old apartment. It's amazing to look at them and then look at where we're at now. Major differences in image quality and production value. So that's why we haven't removed them. They're just housed over on our Lumix USA Facebook page, since we originally started streaming on Facebook. Let's see here. Time for a couple more questions. Shark says, I think Sennheiser AVX wireless lavs have been incredible for documentary filmmaking. That they have. I think they are some of the most slick, affordable solutions out there for most people in the field. Followed up closely, I'd say, by the Rode Go wireless mic, especially the version 2s. I see a lot of people commenting about how that has an onboard ability for backup audio, which is indispensable in scenarios. Like I said before, I had the issue with dropouts in one recording scenario. If I had those and had the backup audio right on the device, oh, that'd have been so great. Let's see here. John W. Most people record on Lumix at lowest levels on camera, typically negative 12 dBs. Is that a good rule of thumb? When you're looking at the internal gain on cameras, that's where it's going to really kind of, I think, be more on your taste and the microphone combination that you're using. When I'm using both the AVX system or the Sarmonic system, I do have my internal gain pulled down. With the XLR one, you have that selection right on the side, since the processing is done here and then injected into the video. So this gives me a lot more control over the audio. If I'm doing into the 3.5, that's where I'll pull the gain levels down. If you're on cameras like the S1H, you have a lot more fine-tuning control there for pulling down and working with different types of microphones. And the cool thing to know, too, is that the built-in 3.5 millimeter on the modern Lumix cameras, so I think it started with the GH5S, went to the GH5 Mark II, the full S series of cameras, and the box cameras. They also have the ability to toggle the 3.5 millimeter in between passive, phantom power, and line in. So you have different gain levels for each of those that you can manually select depending on the microphone that you're using. So that's something really cool to kind of know that the cameras have depending on the microphone you're using. But as far as typically negative 12 being a good rule of thumb, I do it, but I'm also not the highest educated in audio. I do it, but I follow a lot of the logic that Todd pointed out. I make sure that my levels are anywhere between -12 and -6 dB, and I'm never clipping them, so that when I bring it into software, I have a lot of leeway to work with my audio. Let's see here. A couple more questions, and then I do have to wrap. Wireless mics are great. Joseph answering some questions there. Oh, hey, Richard. Hey, welcome, man. XLR1 versus external recorder, pros and cons, really quickly. Pro for the XLR1 is that it's a single unit that's injected right into the video files on the camera. It's all handled through the XLR or the hot shoe on the camera. So for about the same price as an external recorder, you can have something that's mixing the audio right into the footage, and you're still getting high resolution audio, so 96 kilohertz, 24-bit. You have most, if not all, of the controls that most external recorders are going to give you, and you have your dual XLR adapter here, or you have your dual XLR inputs. So big advantage, not having to sync audio in post. The advantage of external recorders, though, you can typically you have more inputs options with them. So you can get an external audio recorder that's got 4 channels that also has a 3.5 millimeter input or 2. So you have a couple good other options there. The trade-off being that you just have to sync those in post. The other advantage is that in most external recorders, or some external recorders, you have different audio formats. You have different quality of audio between different ones, different bit depths for the audio. So a lot of it comes down to really how precise you need to be. The XLR1 audio, I think, is just going to be, solid. I use this thing. Convenience to me is huge. So if I don't have to have anything extra and it saves me time in post, I'm going with the XLR1 all day long. All right. With that, I actually have to call it for this week. Yeah, this has been so awesome. I can see Todd jumped in right at the end there, so thank you, Todd, for joining us. There's been so much information shared about audio and in general with the Lumix cameras. Yes, Lumix cameras, the image quality and the performance that we have with the cameras, that's always been kind of one of the more kind of core things that we talk about on these streams. But I was so excited that we were able to do a, kind of more out-of-the-box conversation with just audio, something that's more relevant, I think, to the vast number of users, especially whether or not you use Lumix cameras or not. So thank you so much for joining us this week. We will be live. If you have been living under a rock for the last couple of days, you will know that we have an event coming up Monday night here in the United States. So go over and take a look at that event. We will be... sorry, I'm making sure I pull links and stuff. We will be interacting with everybody on that event, so make sure to go over, get yourself the reminder set and all that fun stuff for that stream. We'll have more updates on the rest of the Lumix Live schedule next week, so stay tuned. If you don't already, drop a like on this video if you enjoyed the content that you got out of this. Maybe consider giving us a subscribe. It helps me out tremendously in bringing more of this content to everybody. So definitely, thank you so much for tuning into these. Subscribing is an awesome thing to help me keep doing these. If you don't already, go take a look at our Instagram page. We are constantly interacting and posting some cool content over there. If you're someone who wants to see your content displayed by a manufacturer, especially by Lumix, make sure to tag us. We love featuring users' content and promoting, creatives out there. So definitely make sure to go take a look at that. What else? Lumix Pro Services we talked about. If you are someone looking for the most up-to-date firmware for your cameras and what is available, make sure to take a look at the link I just dropped in the chat. This is where you'll be able, it's kind of a one-stop shop for what firmware is up, what features are available on those cameras, and what came out in the firmware. So make sure to go take a look at that. One last thing, Lumix Pro Services, we have the red and the platinum tier here in the United States. You have the information up on screen in the QR code if you're looking for Lumix Pro here in the stateside. Outside of that, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Todd, for joining us. I love these streams. I love the interactions that all of you guys have with us. So, yeah, with that, I will see everybody on Monday night. So take care. Have a good rest of your weekend. And again, I did it again this week. I didn't set my outro out. It's been a long week. All right. See everybody next week.